Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Baulch, and later in the program we will be featuring one of the street talk interviews we recorded in December with members of the public as they walked around in Bourke St Mall in the city. But for now, our guest is Parker Counts, a retired NASA engineer from the United States. Parker, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gavin.
Well, we go back a little while, but I want to bring you right up to date and ask you a question of when you heard what you're about to hear last. Okay. Let me look at my notes. Launch sequence start, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. When was the last time you heard that?
10 days ago. That was I just got married 10 days ago, and we had finished a most wonderful ceremony. Everything was done well. Debbie, my wife, had organized the ceremony, and she wanted something surprising. And I found out later that late one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, she got up and made up her mind what she wanted to do at the moment I was asked to kiss the bride. So we got to that point. The pastor said, "You can now kiss the bride," and somebody had turned on a video that says, "Okay, ignition sequence, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then comes the sound of a shuttle launch." And so that was a bit of a surprise, and it did break the audience up, and we had a great time.
Good. And did you remember to kiss the bride?
Oh, I did come back, and I did have a note from you that I was able. No, that's disrupted the note that you had given me about, well, you have my permission to kiss the bride twice. I had planned to do that, but I guess this was totally disruptive, so I just gave up. So one kiss was all, but it was a great event. But it was quite an interesting. We had a lot of NASA friends in the audience, and so it made it a very nice event.
Well, that's lovely. And of course, you know and I know that Debbie is sitting watching us do this interview, so you'd better be on the straight and narrow. Bro.
I'll have to be careful.
You will. Okay, so why would one have a shuttle launch at your wedding?
Oh, well, I think that was the surprise element. That was to be a reminiscent of my 40 years with NASA, and she was well aware of where I had been and what I had been doing. So this was her bright idea to be able to make it a lighter side, but it certainly did. The message got across pretty quickly.
I'm going to have to get to know this lass. All right, let's wind time back a little bit. Tennessee. Tennessee's famous for what?
Well, Tennessee, we would say, some of us, was Tennessee football. So it goes back. That's my heritage. Both Debbie and I were raised in Tennessee, and we have that heritage. And I went on to school at Knoxville, graduated, and went immediately to work for NASA down in Huntsville, Alabama.
What did Huntsville specialize in at the time?
At the time, Huntsville was responsible. If this was a time I came in to NASA about mid-Apollo, so it already had been President Kennedy had set the banner to launch a man, bring him safely home from the moon in a decade. And so this kicked off the need for a very large rocket. And so Dr. Werner von Braun had come over from Germany after World War II and was in the process of organizing a team, and then he was given permission to build a rocket that would take men to the moon.
Now, where in this walk, because engineers are, they're very focused people, maybe science and maths are high on their agenda. So where does your faith and spiritual formation take place?
Well, it's interesting because I guess when I started work with NASA, I was not a Christian. I'd thought everything was okay, and as you think when you come out of school, you can do all the right and do all the worldly things. And so I was started the first 13 years of my career, first 10 years of my career was moving. So I thought I did everything to my standards, and everything was fine. And I was fortunate. I had good jobs with NASA. So it was later in life that I became aware and where I needed to make a change in my life.
All right. Did any of the exploration, the science, the moon is out there, man has landed on it, was there any wonder, that there's man, but there's something outside of man, something greater, someone behind all of this science?
In a very subtle way, there was that thought that said you could, yes, there could be something greater and some purpose of life. I had the general knowledge that there was a spiritual aspect to it, but I was caught up in the engineering side of things, and so I was moving forward. We were building rockets and going to take these men to the moon. So that became the focus, and the other was the latter. But it was quite interesting to compare. And later in life, and in fact, one of my trips to Australia, I was asked, do you see any dichotomy between being a Christian and being work in the space program? My answers then were no, not at all. I'm very clear now. This was post then when I made my decision for the Lord. That then I could look back and see then what all the changes were and what was really happening, and I saw no dichotomy, no difference about, because clearly this universe has been created something much greater than we are. And I think what we're doing, and my answer to that question was, I believe that we can see now through all the technology and all the things that we've developed and how we're moving and forward and how well we're going. We're going to continue to grow. There's some great events, just the telescopes that have shown up recently, as about how much of this universe is yet to be known. The astronomy books are being rewritten by just the development of these technologies. So I think it all plays quite well together.
Good. Well, we'll be back in just a moment to continue this discussion. You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and our guest is Parker Counts. Well, Parker, we had looked at some of your early journey in and around engineering and NASA, and now with your value changes through faith, reading God's Word, life is precious. How would you define that?
Life is precious. It became precious to me because then I had a greater respect and knowledge, and as I was studying. What was interesting about my move to California was that I met some wonderful Christian people that were there, and I began studying. Now, interestingly, in mine, while I made that decision that God, if you're real, get me out of this mess. So that was me having to first acknowledge there was a God, and then coming to faith that there was. But I spent the next 9 years of that term, including the 3 in California, trying to earn my salvation. I thought, well, I've got to do this, and so started teaching Sunday school and started doing these and things, and it took a different process to go through, but the faith kept me moving through there.
Yes. Okay. Now, my journey, not like yours, mine's been more in the art field, where I've created more than what I've actually assembled and designed. And life to me is precious. My life was abused early in my childhood, and when I came to faith and believed that God cared for me in my crisis, I looked out for that preciousness in others. In other words, right to life for me is from the preborn through to the elderly, who at the end of their life need care, and we at the start of our life, the preborn, need the nurturing of a family life. And so I've kind of looked out for those without a voice, and you would be in the same boat as that, I would imagine.
Oh yes. Well, once you've come, there's no clearly, that's God's way, and we need to be careful. And when children are raised, when they're started, and I mean, it's no question in my mind that this is that's the right for the. We've got to. That's just God's way of developing and bringing children into this world, and we tend to have moved away from that. And yes, no, I support that fully and completely.
There are many benefits from the space program and the space shuttle program. What are some of those?
Well, start back with Apollo, and you can understand. I know the example many of us use. The computers were an outgrowth. We had to have to get to the moon, and the weight was precious, and you had to micro-miniaturize the electronics and the computers. So to make that work, we had to develop that capability, and one could only marvel at how we've come with the cell phone in my pocket. It's got more capability than the Apollo had going to the moon. So computers were driven, the avionics, the rocketry. There are so many benefits that have given us the ability, but it applies to life too. It applies to how we've developed the things that have made our lives better as a result of the technology investments of the space program. And there's many. Medical field is another one. It's just outstanding. Things we're doing now were developed again from a space application. So these are just tidbits of areas that have been benefited by the technology.
I'm amazed at medical science when a woman goes in for a scan for the child in her first, second or third trimester, and now they can see not just a 2D image of this developing child within the womb, but 3D and in colour as well, and you go home with a DVD and here's this new life being formed. And of course 20 years ago that would not have been thought of.
Yeah. Tremendous strides have been made it's certainly the medical industry.
Yes. Now, back to some of the tragic losses that occurred with Challenger and Columbia. There were a number of Christians involved in the program. What do you remember?
Well, I guess if I were to think of the Columbia accident, I did know Rick Husband, the commander of that mission, and a fine Christian man, and knew him well. But I think the one thing that touched me was what he did. He made videos of his every day that he was in space, because he would always have a devotion with his family in the morning. Well, this came out during the course of it, but he had made videos before his mission for each day. So they had a video of his morning devotional he would have had with them, and that was played every morning for his children while he was away. And of course he lost his life. But many people, and many of the ones I knew, were very strong Christians, but willing to sacrifice and take the risk of human spaceflight is there, and then to be able to do things for the betterment of their families as well as for the humanity.
Yes.
And it was wonderful people that I had the privilege of working with.
Wow. What form is NASA in today? Is it three agencies working together? How does it work when you're developing something new?
Well, we do use the field centers. We have 10 field centers, and each one has this particular expertise. Huntsville, Alabama, Marshall Space Flight Center, where I worked, was the propulsive side. So we're building the next generation rocket. It's called the Space Launch System, and it will be 10% bigger than the Apollo rocket that took men to the moon, and the emphasis is eventually going back, developing this rocket, and with the ultimate goal of getting back toward taking humans to Mars.
Parker Counts, thank you so much for your time.
And thank you.
You're watching Support Life, and that's all for our conversation with Parker today. But stay tuned, because after the break, we'll be back with one of the Street Talk interviews we recorded in December with the members of the public in the Bourke St Mall in Melbourne.
Lindy with us. Welcome, Lindy.
Thank you.
We're a Support Life program on Channel 31.
Okay.
And we're going to ask you a couple of questions, if it's okay. Probably about 10 questions.
Okay.
Do you consider human life valuable, and why?
Yeah, it is valuable. I think because there's people that are meant to be here, and there's gorgeous people that need to live on, and families do miss them. Yeah, and crocodiles too. But I do believe, yes, human life is very valuable, especially all around the world in poverty countries. The government should treat those people a little bit more like their family, and I think we might get some solutions. That's
Okay.
deep. That is deep. No,
Did I
it's true.
introduce you, Snap?
No,
Sorry.
I'm Snap Crocodilus. At
Sorry,
your
Snap
service.
Crocodilus.
He
Sorry.
wants to answer some questions
Okay,
too.
all right.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Maybe we could ask Snap the next question. Snap, have you or anyone you know been affected by the loss of a loved one?
Yeah, I have. My grandpa. Yeah, his
your grandpa.
That was
Okay.
sad. Yeah, and he was a cool dude. A
Was
little
he?
guy. A little guy. Yes.
A little guy.
And we had both been at the same
Okay.
time. Yeah,
You had.
family member and
I'm
friends.
sorry to hear that. Okay. Have you been affected by anyone through the loss of an abortion? You know, anybody that's been affected by loss?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that's more my subject. Okay, I won't pay attention. All right, you look over there. Yes, definitely. There's been a couple of choices that were not their own, and so that had to happen, or it was a case of just bad circumstances. But yes, I've been able to hold a hand to help somebody that was through that. Sad. Yeah, exactly.
It's nice of you to do that. If you heard that a pregnant woman died, for example, in a car accident, would you consider the child in her womb a second death or not?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I know of a case similar where the baby actually lived. So I don't know how to answer that one, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Snap, what about you?
No comment.
Okay, that's all right. When does human life begin and why?
Oh gosh, it begins, isn't it on conception really? It begins very early. They've even proven that. In the womb, the child makes signs and breathes and even has emotions. So yeah, it definitely starts way from the beginning of life.
Under what circumstances would it be justifiable to terminate or abort a child?
If it's causing the mother ill health, which again I have noticed and spoken to people of this in the fields of health, no other really circumstances that I could think of, but only if it was for health and it wasn't well. Yeah.
Do you think people are influenced by political and social reasons to abort a child?
Yeah, definitely they are. It can be the one person's decision or the family's decision, but there is a lot of influence out there and they will have a conscience because of it. So I believe politically driven media can actually encourage the people to make those decisions, maybe faster or later. Yeah, it is a tough subject. It is.
What about you, Snap? Do you think social issues come to play in these things?
Yeah, definitely. We're all just one big family. We should get along, but we also do influence each other well.
Very
a
well
lot.
said.
Yeah.
Very well said, Snap.
He's a
Very
good man.
good.
Oh
He
yeah,
is.
I'm quite clever.
You are, I can see that. You've got very good morals as well. I can see
A
that.
moralistic crocodile. Yeah.
Now, did you know that it's legal in Victoria to abort a child right up until birth?
Gosh, really? No, I didn't. I didn't know that.
Current law, yeah.
Wow.
Right up until birth
That's
in Victoria.
serious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've never been in this position. I don't plan to be. I have thousands of children I perform for, but I see those gorgeous little people. I don't know enough about that type of. I do apologise. Ignorance is bliss in that case. But no, I didn't realise that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. 9 too. Yeah, he's a bit unappalled. He's appalled. Okay.
Well, how about this one? In Australia, 100,000 children are aborted each year. Firstly, did you know this? Yep.
Not that many, but I knew a lot.
Close to 100,000.
He's still an accountant, man. That's incredible.
If another sector of the human race was so mistreated, would you stand up and say something especially for the unborn?
I guess I could try, yeah, because they should get a go. It's not fair, especially when they're healthy and they just want to have a good life like we do.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a serious subject when you're bringing it up, because I started ventriloquism because I had a hole in the heart. So I've been in and out of hospital with heart surgery ever since I was 4 years old. And my mum had to go through that decision because she was very young, and in the 70s, you just told your age. I didn't tell my age, but in the 70s, that was pretty taboo, of course. But my mum never would have done that. She was a beautiful lady, and she raised me to where I am today, and so did all this life as well. My grandpa, that we lost, sad, he gave me my first puppet. And the rest is history, and now I help promote health and happiness around the globe. And I believe in it greatly because my mum was in that position many a times, and doctors said that I wouldn't live past 10. Now imagine if that was something she thought, oh well, I won't get the surgery again, I can't afford it. The government did help out, thank you government, but it's just not fair, because that would have been the cruelest thing that she would have had to face.
Or even
and if she
worse
had given up. Yeah.
Even worse still, if it was determined that someone was going to be ill in womb, then some people may say, well, but what's the point? But then when we look at each other, and we're not all perfect, but we've all had a very good life. So.
She's abnormal. Yeah, I am abnormal.
Apart from you, Snap, you're perfect.
I'm perfect crocodile. We're not perfect, and that's the truth, and that's what makes us all so beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, we really, really appreciate you both coming on our program and talking.
Thank you for the invite. It was very interesting questions.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. Best wishes.